Multiplying complex numbers is again something you've done in Algebra 2, so it shouldn't be all that difficult or all that new for you. I want to point out though that the biggest thing you have to remember is that I is the square root of -1. And I squared means you're going to take the square root of -1 and you're going to square it. And if you remember, the square root and the squared cancel, so I squared is really -1. And we're going to use that really, really big time when we're multiplying complex. So here we have an example of 3 plus 2i times 1 minus 4i. I like to use a box to set these up because it really organizes things for us. So we have 3 plus 2i and 1 minus 4i, and we multiply those out. 1 times 3 is 3, 1 times 2i is 2i, 3 times -4i is minus 12i, and -4i times 2i, this is where it gets interesting. We have -4 times 2, that's -8, and then we have I times I, and that's I squared. And you'll remember I squared is really -1. So technically I have -8 times -1, that's a positive 8. So now as I'm going to write out my answer, I've got my real numbers, which is 3 and 8, so add those together and I get 11. And I've got my imaginary numbers, which is -12i and 2i, and that'll be a minus 10i. Okay, so technically I have 11 minus 10i, or 11 plus a -10i is fine also, and here's our answer. Now the only other that I want to point out is, what if you have something like this, and you really need to remember that squared means you're taking it times itself. We're never ever taking that 2 and distributing it because we have a plus sign here. Whenever we have a plus sign, we need to be thinking we've got 2 of them, we need to use a box. So whenever you see a plus sign, think box. So we set it up again. We'll go through this. 2 plus 5i times 2 plus 5i. Multiply those out. 2 times 2 is 4. We've got 10i. We've got another 10i. And then the interesting one, 5 times 5 is 25. I times I is I squared. But remember, I squared is -1. So 25 times -1 is -25. And then to find our answer, we take our real parts and we get -21. And we take our imaginary parts and we get 20i. And so there would be our answer.